if you don't mind, would you go through, leave that slide where it is, and just walk through the steps that you would do and refer by number to each step that's on the picture?
Sure. One of the first things to do is as in the first slide, look and see where you'd like to have the garden. And then, of course, as we discussed, you need to find out what limitations there might be in that area. The slope may not be right. There might be easements in that area. I've got easements in my property that I wanted to build 3 or 4 rain gardens, and I got one shoved off in a corner that's the only place that was left. And so, but that initial research, when you find out what those limitations are, easements, buried utilities, and then a natural next step is,
I think I want to go to step 3 next.
yeah, you're right. It's, you need, once you've found out where you'd like to have it, you need, well, you know, have I got enough room there? And so determine what your contributing area is. And, you know, until you've done that, you might be digging holes all over the yard. So after that, it's probably doing the percolation test once you've got a pretty good handle on
I
that.
think I'd do the outline, the quick and dirty outline. 2 times, you take your area and you figure out, okay, it needs to be twice as wide as it is long. Right? Was that one of your?
That's a good ratio.
I lay the outline of what I want it to look like, and then I kind of figure out what the elevation needs to be approximately, and then I go with the percolation test.
Right,
May I interject? There's a big picture here to consider, and that's that with our audience, thinking in terms of what one person can do and what am I comfortable with in my yard, probably less of a concern. I think picture 3 is a lesser concern for them, because if they build a smaller rain garden and what that roof is going to generate, the excess will just go over the overflow.
Well, that's true. That's true. But it's good to know that you don't want to inundate a garden. We dealt with an inundated garden, and it can be much greater than you would find in your yard, but that can be a problem too. But Shelby, you're right. You know, once you see where you can build it, then you want to look at the shape and see, do I like it here? Is the elevation going to work? Can I get the water in there?
And then do your perk test, see if you have a problem soil or not.
Right. And we have problem soils with compaction, and somebody sold my topsoil to somebody else, and all sorts of things.
And from there, once you decided the garden should work based on the perk test, or it's a little marginal, we'll do some modification if it doesn't perk very well. You can then go to step 5. When you do your outline of step 4, there you got 2 perimeters to deal with. One would be the footprint of the bottom of the garden.
Yes.
And then you've got a bigger footprint, which will be where is the dirt going to go?
Right.
And if a small garden, you can pretty much approximate that and eyeball it. But if you get into a larger garden, you need to do some calculations of how much am I going to dig out, how much dirt am I going to have, and where's it going to go putting in the berm.
And as soon as you dig the grass off, the marking you put down for the bottom of the garden is gone. So you have to have some way to put that bottom back in. And so as you're excavating, to know when you've gotten there and
You talked about taking the sod off.
Yes.
What's the reason for that?
well, first of all, because you don't want it mixed in with other material that you're going to be using to particularly build the berm.
Well, you don't want to take dirt and excavate it and put it on top of grass, because then you've got a layer that water can walk through after you've built your garden, and it'll compromise it, potentially leading to failure. So you really want soil-to-soil contact on the lower end where your berm's going to be.
Particularly there, yes. The other thing about grass is that it It's pretty resilient stuff, and it'll just up, jump, and grow again if you've got it down in the garden. And I like to have as pristine a growing medium as I can down there. So I find bald spots in the yard where I need to put some sod or compost it. You can compost it and rototill it up next year and use it for mulch in the garden in the following year. So.
And you really do not want to build a rain garden and have the problem of hauling the dirt off. You want to try to manage all the dirt on site, because if somewhere down the road somebody decides, we really don't like what you have here, then we restore it back to what it was when it was built.
Right. You might sell the property and somebody says, rain garden, there, and just as you say, there all the material, just fold it back in where it was.
The last observation I've got is when you talked about clusters. You got, there's another slide, early on.
Earlier.
Nice garden that has, really reflects the concept of putting back there.
There. Yes.
That in order to get that effect, you've got to really think about what type of planting you have and group those plants and get some color mass effect to make that come out.
Yes, and
attractive as it is.
In addition to that, work with your nurseryman and find out what the blooming periods are. And you can group the colors. You might have clashing colors coming up at the same time, and if I just grouped them a little bit differently, I could have had these complementary colors coming up at the same time, and then something different later on. Grouping, as you can see here, those look to be grasses. Grouping different textures of plants, colors of plants, heights, and densities, the flowering and the grasses. Sometimes you might decide to use sedges that they look like grass, but they stay green, some of them 12 months out of the year. So these groupings, it's a style of gardening that some people don't agree with. My father-in-law is one of these poke it in the ground wherever you want to kind of people, and I'm a group it kind of guy. It allows the plants to fertilize one another. The insects that like that particular plant, they know how to get to it. So there's lots of benefits to it.
If we study stormwater, we talk about water volume. In fact, that this subdivision was built starting in 1949.
Right.
No rules.
Very lax.
Well, there's nothing to hold the water back in this subdivision. We then experienced Pelican Drive, where the old Meadowfork Manor was built. And when they developed that area, they had to put a detention basin in. So that's a practice. Yeah, 5 feet deep. Where that area is supposedly holding water back, and they're not supposed to aggravate the stream anymore after development than before.
Right.
So here we stand with the Meadowfork neighborhood that we all love, and we're doing these environmental living green workshops. What it's all about is rain barrels, 100 rain barrels. Well, they'll help some, especially if folks will let the water out so that there's a volume to replenish when it rains. But you take a rain garden as compared to a rain barrel, you're going to do a lot more towards getting water to go into the ground and not go in the storm sewer.
Exactly.
Than you will with a rain barrel, because you don't have to turn that switch to let the water loose. It's going to go in there every time it rains. And as you said, 90% of the rain from that area is going to go in that rain garden.
And I sized it for my house, the part of the rooftop that goes to my rain garden. I would need 6 rain barrels to handle that same amount of water that.
And you got to go out there and turn the water on and let it out every time it rains.
And I know me. That wouldn't be happening. I can just sit there and watch my rain. I'd love to go watch the rain garden fill up. And it drains out and
And you saw me wince when you said 12 inches deep to prevent freezing. The pipe underground that goes from the house downspout to the rain garden is dry.
well, it is
If it's designed properly.
unless
There's a
it's
freezing problem there, so it can be 6 inches of full soil. It's in your yard. You need to know it's there so that you don't go plowing through it
Right.
and tear it up. But that's really the only consideration there. In fact, I run my incoming water into an underdrain system, so it goes directly to the roots.
Well,
If there's
that's
enough,
true.
it then comes up in the garden. So it doesn't have to come in the top, as long as it gets in there.
I think I remember digging that trench.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.